afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. It's summer vacation, but across the state, many school-age kids have been experiencing hands-on projects involving STEAM, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math. The STEAM projects involve the kids as well as the University of Vermont, community libraries, and an organization called Vermont Makers. Rebecca Gollin tells us more.
These are so you can get some batteries into your toy and make sure it works, okay?
For kids, there's not much that's more exciting than playing with a new toy.
I've seen this toy before. It's this thing where there's, you pull a lever and then an arrow spins around and it'll point at an animal, and then a speaker will say, duck says quack, quack.
So to start, what we're going to do is an investigation of our toys.
These kids aren't excited to play with their new toys. They're excited to take the toys apart and see what's inside.
When you first start to take the toy apart, you just see like this, pretty much, and you have to take the screws off of so you can go onto the inside, and then you get to this part, and then there's still screws on this that I could just unscrew and then take this piece off. But technically you just see the toy before you see the insides.
One of the teachers here had asked me, how do you think that works? And I'm like, some sort of angle sensor. And so it was kind of like that in a way, but kind of not.
At this toy hacking workshop at the Deborah Rawson Memorial Library in Jericho, participants select a toy and become an expert in how it works, from the outside in.
And then you can do it all lowercase.
A, B, C. We start with a toy that's a used toy, but it's in its off-the-shelf condition. And the students are asked to look at the inputs and the outputs and understand what an input and an output is and what input triggers what output. So the sense of really understanding how it works. And that helps them, once they get into the project and open it up, understand what it does. But also there can be some surprising things about how it works or how it doesn't work.
What was making it work?
Oh, so on the gear that turned the arrow, on the back of the gear there was a little bump, and then wherever the bump stopped it would hit one of the buttons, and then that's what would make the machine say pa, pa, pa. Yeah.
So now some of these toys do a whole lot. Like look, this one has all these buttons over here.
This class is part of a series of summer workshops that have been taking place at libraries around the state. It's called Vermont Makers and Librarians, Spark a Culture of Innovation, and is largely funded by the Vermont Community Foundation, with additional support from UVM College of Engineering and Mathematical Sciences.
Each library initially applied through the Vermont Department of Libraries to see if they could get the funding for these programs, and it was the 15 libraries that were selected. And each one of them, then they could choose from 5 different programs. So we had 5 different offerings, one which was Creative Creatures, which is a recycled plastics and solar power project. We have Squishy Circuits, which is conductive Play-Doh. Toy Hacking, which is a reverse engineering project with used toys. E-Origami, which is a way of using paper folding and copper tape to build circuits and structures. And then E-Textiles, which is actually sewing circuits. And it's sort of part craft, part learning how circuits work.
The programs are geared to students in K through 12, but educators and parents are welcome to join in.
Once the parents are in there too, they're like, wow, this has been great.
Thad Sinski is the youth librarian at the Rawson Memorial Library. This workshop fits right in with the library's summer program that focuses on science. Giving kids a chance for hands-on learning can spark their interest in new subjects.
That generates that curiosity that's going to take you to a book or to research it a bit more, if not do it more.
After taking their toy apart, participants explore the parts that they've uncovered.
So with mine, it was like a little cat that rolled around, and it had some ultrasonic sensors in the back that would sense if someone was following it or not. Inside there were lots of circuit boards. 2 of them had switches. One of the switches just controlled volume, the other turned it on and off. And so for a while, even after I'd taken it completely apart, it still worked, and I could make it still play the songs or say something. But there was lots of different wires connecting different places. There was also a motor to make it roll around.
The next step is to see what new things they can make the machinery do.
Once we're in there, it can go in a couple of different directions, and it does depend on the age of the students that we're working with, but we can go into some circuit bending where you're really messing around with the toy and maybe making it do some things it's not supposed to do, or you can, but that are kind of cool and exciting and surprising, or the other part of it too is actually then having some intention around what you want that toy to do. And then with older age groups, we can start bringing in and combining toys and doing different things, or just even actually reimagining the toy and reusing parts of the circuit.
You had this metal piece that was connecting to these dots, and you were pressing the song button to see if, like, when you're doing that, when you touch the metal thing, like the song changes. And it actually happened to me up here. The song changed. It was like hickory dickory, and then it got all fizzy, and then it was like hello. And that's how I knew that I had found the right piece, because it was like this in the middle of the song.
We like play around and try and get stuff to work again, and yeah, that's like my favorite part, because that's where you get to like really do the experimenting and like, does this work? Does this work? Does this work? And mix it around. And sometimes, if you have the same piece as someone else, you can take the piece from them and try and work it on yours, which is cool. I got to do that.
And it worked?
And it worked, yeah. I tried using a caterpillar foot to make mine work, and it worked, yeah.
While not everyone here got past dissecting their toy, several participants did manage to add a button or wire to make it do something new. In other words, a successful hack. How did you attach that button?
Oh, well, you get these clips actually, and they're like kind of like the clips that make power, and then you have to find the button that you thought that was that made it work, and then to clip it on, and then you have to clip it onto the other one, and then that makes your sound.
The libraries hosting the workshops have all committed to running one or more of the programs on their own during the school year. That means that a lot more students around Vermont will get a chance to hack toys of their own. Anything else you would tell a friend about what you did here today?
I had a lot of fun. I learned a whole bunch of stuff, and you should do it.
One hack that I found, it was like you push something here, and then on these three on the end, you can make some lights light up.
Giving kids the skills and the tools to take something apart and make it new. Vermont Makers and Libraries are certainly sparking a culture of innovation around the state. In Jericho, I'm Rebecca Gollin with Across the Fence.
Well, thanks, Rebecca. Joining me now is the founder of Vermont Makers and a teacher in UVM's College of Engineering and Mathematical Sciences, Jen Carson. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thank you.
I love watching this because when I was growing up, if I took a toy apart like that, I'd be put in detention until don't touch that.
Yes, I mean, I think that in this workshop we're giving people and kids of all ages really permission to really open something up that maybe you've only really seen on the shelf, but then you get access to it and figure out how it works and how it was made.
And why is making an important skill?
I think there's a lot of different reasons, actually. I mean, the process of seeing something through from the beginning to the end is a really important skill, and that seeing something through and being able to troubleshoot through the different things that come up, the surprise things that come up, especially when you're following your own line of inquiry and interest. And I think that what we found is that when we give students permission to follow their own interests, there's a motivating factor there to figure out things that they might not understand.
And it's certainly easier than looking at a diagram and trying to figure that out.
Yeah, it can be, and there are different kinds of learners, right? There are some learners who would really like to have the instructions right up front and know exactly what they're doing, whereas there are others who maybe are going to be more motivated by the creativity or more visual learners. So these programs are designed to motivate both types.
So tell us a little bit more about your organization, Vermont Makers.
Sure. Well, Vermont Makers is a loosely organized group of artists and engineers, and who are very passionate and enthusiastic about making all sorts of different things, and the way that we interact with the community is sort of exchanging and showing that interest based on things that we really love doing.
And so talk a little bit about the rural and grassroots character of the summer program.
Sure. So for these programs, the libraries were given a choice of 5 different ones they could choose from, with the idea being that they would choose a program that they thought suited their community best. So we worked with, in 14 towns, 15 different libraries. So they were really, the hope was that we put them in a position where they could choose something that was they could choose based on what they knew in their communities and what age groups they would appeal to and that kind of thing.
And so describe some of the environmental issues or concerns that were included in the curriculum.
Sure. Well, one of the things that we like to emphasize in Vermont Makers with our work is to be more than just a consumer or a user of technology, but a maker. And so we didn't want everything to be really kit-based, where we're maybe just buying new products or starting off with just being consumers from the beginning. So the idea of reusing the toys was one. There's also another project that uses recycled plastics. And then we've also brought in some safety issues around like what it means when you're opening up a toy, and like hand washing and wearing the safety goggles. And then also what it means to dispose of that toy after, where we've had great support from the University of Vermont to make sure that we're safely disposing of the electronics, because that's a concern that we all face even in our homes.
Right. And so what are some of the things that you heard from some of the kids that took part in this particular workshop?
The toy hacking one, I'd have to start with an observation, is that, and it sort of applies back to what you were saying earlier, is it's almost like there's this desire that we tap into that maybe everyone has always wanted to open a toy up but never been given that chance. But we get a lot of enthusiasm in that the discoveries, giving the kids permission to be the experts, because no one else has opened up that toy before. And what I hear mostly back from them is really about their toys.
I was impressed that they seemed to be very knowledgeable about what they were doing when they were putting together the wires and the different boards.
Yeah, and we're giving them very minimal instruction. I mean, I think it's that power of learning by doing that we're seeing there.
And so if viewers are interested more about participating at Vermont Makers, what should they do?
Right, and I should say that there's a very broad group of Vermonters involved right now, from librarians to the University of Vermont to schools, but we try to bring all that information together on our website at vermontmakers.org.
Tell me a little bit too about the importance of kids early on getting involved in electronics, in sciences.
Well, I can speak specifically to the electronics part and the hands-on part. I think that with the toy hacking workshop, we're inviting that inquiry and that knowledge around play, and that this is not something that's closed off to you. Like, for example, the toy in the store, you could think of that as the black box. Like maybe the most interesting part of that toy is closed off in this way. It's like, you're just supposed to buy it. And I think by opening it up and showing kids really early on what that world and how interesting that world is, and that you can actually engage in a part of that and be a maker of technology as young as as they can understand it, I think it's a winning situation.
Do you think it's easier for kids to sort of wrap their heads around that now, since they are so familiar with electronics, with iPhones, with getting used to pushing buttons and instantly having information and access to technology?
Well, yeah, certainly I think across the board our relationship to technology is becoming more and more intimate, and so there's but I don't know if we can actually assume that they're going to have that comfort level of being the maker of the technology and understanding what's underneath, unless we really make the effort to empower our kids in that way.
And so some of these kids, do you think they'll go on to do other workshops, or do you think this sparked their imagination to try projects at home?
I hope so, safely with adult supervision, which is something that we really emphasize. But I do hope that, the whole idea, these are 3-hour workshops, that they spark an interest, that they spark a curiosity, that they get kids really thinking maybe a little more critically about the technology that's around them, and maybe about what they want technology to be in their own lives, how they want to embrace technology and what they want it to do for them, because technology is ultimately supposed to improve our lives.
Also a good lesson for the parents of these kids as well.
Oh yeah, and that's been a whole lot of fun to have the parents there and teachers there and librarians there, and really the intergenerational outcomes in terms of the groups that we have coming to these workshops has been wonderful.
pretty dynamic.
Yes.
Get your hands in there.
Yes, absolutely. We've had. I think we could do the like, 3 to 93 age group in terms of who we've seen in these workshops.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.